Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on True Story FM. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here with Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete Wright.
Oh, Nikki Kinzer, how are you this fine, fair day?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
No, I'm doing... I'm doing great.
You're doing great.
I'm doing great. Yes, we saw my daughter off to college. It was an emotional weekend. I'll just leave it at that. It was hard. You have that coming up. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a stiff drink ready.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
And today, as a result of my own little emotional storm this weekend, we're going to be talking about turning that negative self-talk upside down. Well, turning it around. But every time I hear turn,
you want
I
to
think
turn it
frown,
upside down.
and I need to turn it upside down. So that's what
I
we're
like
doing.
that.
Yeah, we're turning our frowns upside down, talking about negative self-talk. And as we have been kind of preparing this, I'm seeing like the chat trickle in about, oh, goodness, yes, this is something I need to hear today. And I agree. I think this is a perennial favorite, this topic for those of us trucking in ADHD. So I'm pretty excited about that. Before we do that, head over to takecontroladhd.com. You can get to know us a little bit better, listen to the show right there on the website, or subscribe to the mailing list, and we'll send you an email each time a new episode is released. Connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at Take Control ADHD. And if this show has ever touched you, head over to Patreon. Patreon is listener-supported podcasting, and that's where we have our membership program. That's where it lives, at patreon.com/theADHD podcast. And if you go there, you can sign up, and for a few bucks a month, you get access to perks. You get access to the double, triple secret Discord channels that we have in our Discord server for communicating with our communicating with our community with ADHD. They're good people. And also, you can watch the live streams, chat right along with the shows there. And we have new Patreon goals coming very soon. The new Patreon goal is the New Pete podcast.
And that's a good name too. The New Pete
podcast.
We're just coming to every week we come up with something
new.
The
problem is that when it comes time to actually launch the show, I'm going to have to listen to all of these intros to catch each of the names, because I don't know what we're going to call it at this point. I don't know.
Right now it's the New Pete.
It's the New Pete podcast. All right. And so that's coming very soon. We're very excited about it. We had set a goal in order to be able to, frankly, afford to do a second podcast. We need to hit a certain limit. And so any help you can give us by joining now, if you've ever thought about it, now's really the time. If you want to help push us over the proverbial hump and help us start this whole new property. It's going to be very exciting. Members only. This podcast does not go to the public. You won't be able to find it in iTunes. You won't be able to find it in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It is just for you, the people who support the show. So that's the whole idea. Very excited about that. So that's it. Patreon.com/theADHD podcast.
This is the topic. So this is the last show of our series around transitions. And, as I was thinking about this show, you might think, well, what does negative self-talk have to do with transitions? But when you really think about it, negative self-talk really has something to do with everything. And so I almost feel like anytime we wrap up a topic or theme, the last show of that theme should be turning that frown upside down. Because, and the reason I say that is that negative self-talk it just happens way too much. And it happens so much with ADHDers, not only during transitions, but at any time. And so I always think that these kinds of conversations are really important to have, to remember that we need to be kind to ourselves, especially when you're being challenged by your ADHD. And with transitions, it can easily happen. You think, just to give you a quick example, I'm always late. I can never stop when I need to. I can never start. I can never, like, it's always hard to go from one thing to another. So it's really easy to get into the negative self-talk when you're transitioning, either big or small transitions. So today I have a few reminders of why and how to be nicer to yourself, Pete, right?
How dare you? What if I'm comfortable in my pain?
No, we got to get that out. Got to get the pain out
Get the
and
pain
let the
out.
sunshine in.
Oh, okay. All right. Where do you want to
Uh,
start?
all right. Well,
And
I
let
want
me just say, just so we can all put our curiosity to rest. I did find the song "Twist Your Frown Upside Down" from Teen Beach 2, and I posted
nice.
that in Discord. So
Okay,
you're
good.
welcome, everyone.
You're welcome. You're
Now we
welcome.
know. Okay,
That's right.
you may continue.
All right. Well, first thing I want to say is we need to validate the idea that, you know what, transitions are difficult and they are more difficult with ADHD. So you're not making this up. This is not just a you problem. It is a symptom of living with ADHD. You're not you're not doing anything wrong, and that's the most important thing to remember, is that when your ADHD is challenging you, it's not you doing something wrong. And it's so easy for people to quickly come to the conclusion that they've done something wrong or they
Yes.
should have done something differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially it's magnified by the fact that your challenge with transitions does not look like my challenge with transitions.
Right.
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 That we have different troubles with changing states and experiences.
Yes, absolutely. And you may have different troubles and states, at different times in your life too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
like, it can always look different. There isn't any, recipe that
Mhm.
is hard and true. And the thing with transitions too, because we do know that they are hard and things don't always go as planned. I just want to reemphasize that this is not your fault. ADHD is not a character flaw. It can't be cured. So what we need to do is the best that you can do and move on, and just know that dwelling on past experience is not going to serve you into the future. And whether that experience happened earlier this morning or 10 years ago, because it's really easy to remember the thing that happened 10 years ago too.
Mhm.
So really being kind to ourselves and remembering what is happening.
Oh my gosh. Not only it's like the pain of 10 years ago that I remember. It's like it happened yesterday. That's what my
Yes.
ADHD does to me. It is like
Right.
it happened yesterday. I don't remember the good stuff. The birth of my children might be foggy and emotional, but my
Right.
God, do I remember how I chewed out my boss ill-advisedly in an elevator
Yes.
because
Yes, exactly.
I couldn't handle my work transition. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So we have to just, keep that in mind. That dwelling on it and thinking about it isn't going to help. But
Right.
this is where we can use our growth mindset experience, because remember, we talked about growth mindset and fixed mindset. And with growth mindset, what you can do is you can look at these experiences, but instead of feeling bad about them and beating yourself up over them, you can look and think, okay, what have I learned about myself? What are some options that I can try for next time? How can I make this transition a little bit easier? Do I need to put extra time? Do I need to, take one less appointment? Like, it's that growth of opportunity. What's the opportunity here? And not that this is the only way it's going to always be.
I'm going to ask you how you work with clients in that regard, because I find it's like having that set of questions is one thing, right? Questions, the
Hmm.
growth oriented questions for myself. It's one thing. I can post them up on the wall over my monitor and I can have them in view. But sometimes, when I'm in that negative state, right? When I'm having trouble with a transition, it's hard to transform into being the person willing and able to look at those questions. Right? Do you know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, how do you do that? How do you coach through that particular it feels like walking through deep mud.
I think you lean into the feelings that you're feeling at the time. I
Mhm.
mean, I think that it's okay to be upset. It's okay to feel frustrated, but we don't want to stay there.
Mhm.
So I think you want to give yourself time to process and, be able to do whatever you need to do to get yourself out of that negative spiral, which may be just time. It may be taking a walk. It may be, saying, I'm not going to continue this conversation until, next week. I
It
mean,
may
it could
be,
be
yeah, it may be
whatever.
going into a private space and beating up a pillow
And being
or
by yourself.
crying
Yeah.
or whatever to
Right.
let the emotions out, right?
Yes.
Like it seems in my experience, it's the emotions that are the block, right?
Right. Right.
That's emotion blindness.
And I don't think it's healthy to not feel your emotions, right? I
No.
mean, because then you're just pushing them down, and they're going to erupt at some point,
Yeah.
And so, in my own opinion, the way that I would coach somebody is that feel what you need to feel, process that, but know that you do have light at the end of the tunnel. You can get yourself out of this. Like review the growth mindset. If you don't if you don't remember what it is or how it works, when you start feeling better, think about what can I do with this? What can I
Mhm.
make? What can I do to make this an opportunity and not feel so stuck or feel
Yeah.
bad? I mean,
Right.
so I think it's a process. I don't think it happens overnight. I think depending on the context of how serious the feelings are going to matter, but I do like the reminders. I know that sounds kind of weird. Like, well, I'm not going to really remember to look at those questions, but at some point you will look at them,
Yes.
and it will trigger something to say, wait a minute, there's a different way to think about this.
Well, yeah, and I would say you're right because that becomes the conditioning that you need when you're not in an overly emotional state
Mm-hmm.
that reminds you how to respond when you are in an emotional state. But the other thing you need to do when you're not in an emotional state is find the way to sort of role model your way through um, giving yourself permission to feel emotions completely. Like you
Yeah.
say, to lean in to how you're feeling. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's scary when you
Mm-hmm.
are confronted by like this overwhelming need to cry or scream or punch a wall or something. And sometimes you just need to do those things. I mean, maybe don't
Yeah.
punch a wall, like
Yeah.
protect your hands,
Yeah.
but to go through that experience and actually feel the emotions that you're feeling because we are genuinely like not conditioned to do that. That's not taught
Right.
in schools, and it is hard to do. And so
Mm-hmm.
both of those things are best practiced when you're not
Mm-hmm.
compromised, so that when you
Mm-hmm.
are compromised it becomes instinct like
Mm-hmm.
any other skill.
Absolutely. Well, and my next point is that we want to acknowledge when things are going well. So if you have practiced some of these strategies that we've talked about with transitions, and in fact, one of the shows I even ask, do this, like really try to pick a strategy and try it this week. When you see success, acknowledge it, celebrate it, even if it's just to yourself, because we are so, prone to only focus on what's wrong, and we want to recognize what's going well. And we've talked about success journals before, and I'm a big believer in that. Collect what you're doing right so that you can go back and look at that and say, you know what, I'm a pretty cool person. I can
Hmm.
do these things. I work hard. I persevere. Like I got this, and be your own cheerleader and treat yourself the same way you would treat somebody else. And that's the thing that really, I think hits home for a lot of people when I work with them is, the way you're talking to yourself. Is that how you would talk to your child?
Hmm.
Is that how you would talk to your mother, your best friend, your partner? No,
Yeah.
they would never
Right.
think of doing that. And so, you have to also remember that you should treat yourself the exact same way you would treat anyone else that you love, and appreciate yourself for
Well,
that
and I think
too.
that is another skill that we do not develop naturally.
Mhm.
Right, learning how to celebrate the good things, mostly because when good things happen to us, many of us are conditioned to feel somehow shame that
Yeah.
our success
Right.
is or braggadocio, right? Like we're
Mhm.
somehow crowing and it's unearned crowing and it looks bad.
Mhm.
And so finding that balance of authentically being able to celebrate when good things happen and when you
Mhm.
accomplish good things and then to know when to, shut up, show up, and do the work, right?
Right.
That's a really fine line, and it takes practice, when you're not compromised.
That's right.
So.
Absolutely. Well, and we have talked about limiting beliefs, which, are definitely hand in hand with negative self talk. And one of the things that we have said in the show is, we want to acknowledge that the limiting belief is there. We also want to acknowledge that the negative self talk is there. And I ask you to really challenge yourself when you start to notice that you're saying, I should have done this, or I could have done this, or I can't believe I didn't think about that.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, those are the little red flags that we have to just ignore and really challenge and say, because it really doesn't matter what you could have done, should have done, or did do. Because the only thing you really have control over right now is the present. And what do you do next?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do now? And I know it's so easy for us to beat ourselves up over what should have happened or could have happened. But it's so not serving you. It's so not serving you. And so just really think about, how do you challenge that and move on?
Mm-hmm. The whole idea of figuring out how to challenge that gets into my that sinking spiral of shame pretty
Mm-hmm.
easily, because I immediately go into that space of whatever good stuff has happened, I probably don't deserve it. So it's accidental, it's incidental, because I have such a history of not succeeding in those areas, right? I have such a history of struggling where it seems like other people are doing well. And
Mm-hmm.
so any success must be incidental to my actual participation in it. Do you know what I mean? And I say that sort of royally, but that's a lesson. That's a lesson that I think is incredibly hard to learn, because it's so easy for us to fall into from a very young age.
Well, because you think about it, it's like you don't want to brag. You don't want to look like you think you're better than somebody else when you've accomplished something. Or
But also, I
there's
might be
all of these
genuinely surprised that this.
yeah. But that's what I'm saying is that you get these stories so young at age.
Yeah.
It's you're almost taught, don't be proud of yourself. That doesn't look good. You need to be humble, and I'm not saying that you should be a beeple. But if somebody was to say that to me, if we were coaching and you're saying that to me, I'm going to be, as a coach, right on challenging that. You do deserve it. You're a human being. You deserve to be happy. You deserve, when you work hard to get those things that you've got. And you know what? Sometimes it is luck, and that's okay. I was listening to this podcast with some actors. It's really funny podcast with Jason Bateman and
the unsmart,
yeah,
smart,
it's really
smartless,
funny.
smartless,
Smartless or something.
Yeah.
And they were talking about being an actor, if it's luck or if it's really talent. And they all had their own opinions, how it's kind of both, it is the talent, but then sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time, and you have the right contact or whatever. So you don't want to build your career or your life on one or the other. But appreciation
some
and gratitude,
people have.
yeah. But I think for the norm, that the non-actors of the world and entertainers, gratitude we can appreciate, in all forms, whether you think it was lucky, or you think that you really earned it, or you have some imposter syndrome, which is very normal for everyone. And it's also okay to not know everything, you're not an imposter for not knowing something. And so it's also kind of remembering that. But I've got to end this podcast with my favorite singer,
Jason
Mraz.
Yeah.
Look for the good.
No,
if you
but
don't
wait,
know
wait,
that
wait.
song, you have to go look for it.
You need to sing it.
I'm not singing it.
Everybody listening right now is expecting fully for you to begin singing. Please?
No.
No.
I am going to
Cue.
say, Pete Wright, to put in the show notes the video of Jason Mraz singing "Look for the Good," and that's, to me, I mean, granted, I love his music because it's so uplifting, but it's always such a good reminder that even in like the worst of times, there is good, and there's gratitude, and there's joy, and there's laughter, and we want to focus on what makes us smile. And I had and reach out to the people when you need to reach out to them, because I had a really not great day yesterday, and I reached out to one of my best friends, and her response to me was so beautiful, and it was so uplifting and so encouraging. And all I could say in my response was, I love you and thank you.
Mhm.
And so you've got to reach out to those people that are going to help uplift you too. So,
Truly.
I am a naturally optimistic person. So I know it probably comes kind of, it sounds like it comes easy to me, but it's not. I mean, I have anxiety. I have worries and things that I have to really work hard on, battling. Um, but man, I still think it's so much better to look for the good than to just always see the bad and have no hope. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
anyway, there we
I
go.
hope this little meditation on negative self-talk is useful for somebody out there. I listen, just posted in the chat room, I have a lifetime subscription to imposter syndrome. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And they never send me gifts. Anyhow,
I get no benefit from it.
I get no benefits from that subscription.
No live streams.
Yes. No live streams. No special podcast. No.
Nothing.
No.
I just have to pay extra money.
I feel crappy about it. Oh, anyway. Well, thank you, everybody, for hanging out and listening to the show. We sure appreciate your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you have something to contribute, head over to the Show Talk channel. There's a thread for this week's live stream. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it, how you handle it, how you lift yourself up and avoid shooting all over yourself. That's where you can join us. And you can do that by becoming a supporting member at the deluxe level. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright. We'll see you right back here next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.